like,
Okay, is it recording now? I hit record on my end.
It looks like.
yes, it is. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure because I know we were talking about recording the meeting and stuff. So, all right, good.
Right. So anyway, I think another reason why the tutorials aren't super in depth is because there are a lot of directions you can go in terms of color theory. The way color palettes are done typically have changed throughout history. And so there are some concepts that are more difficult to apply because they're more specific to that era. So honestly, I want to cover the modern era. And I think through doing that, it'll help you sort of develop an eye for looking at the styles of color palettes in the past. Right, anyway, so this is some of the art that I drew a while back. I followed all the tutorials out there that I could. However, there are just a couple of things that I couldn't get because those tutorials didn't cover those things. And those things that I'm talking about may not seem apparent to you at first, but as you can see, or as we go through the presentation, you'll be able to recognize what's wrong with these palettes. So anyway, there's a lot that we need to cover today. I think there's like 70 slides in here. So have a notepad ready, prepare to absorb some of the advice I got for you.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is what we're covering. So we're gonna cover color coverage, scope, color relativity, and of course, doing value checks and equiluminance. Right, we're gonna start with color coverage. And this is essentially creating the structure of a palette and forming a proper color hierarchy. So the first thing you want to do is not wing the color palette. And this is what I mean by winging the color palette. You just choose random colors and you expect it to work. But does it work? No, it doesn't work. We made a drawing without a color palette, but it looks terrible. The colors are drab and they conflict with each other. We have the potential to make this drawing far more appealing than it is. But in order to do that, we need to learn palette theory. I mean, obviously. So I'm assuming you all know what a palette is. Should be pretty familiar to you already. But basically, it's essentially just a collection of colors that go into an image. And so the way color palettes are made isn't necessarily random. It isn't based off of some intuition that artists have that's invisible to the outsiders. It's, in other words, it's not magic. There's clear logic behind how it works. And the way it works is through color runs. And so color runs are ranges of colors that contain about 3 to 5 colors that exist within a palette. And it signifies a decrease in brightness. So basically, it goes from the lightest color to the darkest color. And it does that through a very specific manner. And that's what we're about to uncover today. And so with this palette, you can clearly see there are 2 color runs here. This is a analogous color palette. And so as you can see, each of the colors, each of the dominant colors are in their own color run, essentially. And so let's uncover how to create color runs. So the first thing you want to do for any drawing is select a base color. So the base color, I typically like to pick the skin color as the first one, or it can be the outfit color, or it can be the hair color. It can be anything. It's up to you. And so when you get to a darker color,
Yeah.
I'm doing great. How about you? Great to have you here. Anyway, when you're selecting a darker color, you want to do 3 steps. So step 1 is to increase the saturation of the color. Next, you want to decrease the value. And then you want to shift the hue slider towards dark blue. And as you can see, when we pull that off a 3rd time, we get a really nice color gradient, as you can see. So currently, as it stands, we have let's go ahead. So when you want to get a lighter color, you would do the opposite. You would decrease the saturation, increase the value, and then shift the hue slider towards yellow. And then this is what we end up with in the end, a monochromatic color palette that I think looks really nice. However, you can take it a step further. What if you don't want this to be a monochromatic color palette? What if you want it to be complementary, which is very common in C? You could easily do that. And you do that by creating what's called an adjacent run. So to create an adjacent run, I would typically take the brightest color from the previous run and then build off of that. And as you can see, I follow the same exact steps as from last time by computing the darker colors, increasing the saturation every time, decreasing the value, shifting it towards dark blue. It's that simple. And then finally, this doesn't necessarily contribute to the color palette because it takes up a very small percentage of the drawing. These are accents. So accents are little pops of color that you can add to the drawing that make it look extra interesting without necessarily impacting the readability of the overall color scheme. And so basically, when you're using colors, when you're filling in the colors for the first time, you need to take a greedy approach. That means you need to use as little colors as possible, but take up as much area as you can on the drawing. The reason you want to do this is because less is more when it comes to colors. You should always consider that for sure. The more colors you're dealing with, the more difficult it is to manage them. So anyway, how do we do that previous step? Well, we can rely on this curve right here, the Cherenkov curve. So essentially, this Cherenkov curve is actually based off of a real world phenomenon. That's Cherenkov radiation. That's basically what happens when neutrons ionize the air molecules, and it creates this beautiful blue light, as you can see. And so when you're hue shifting, when you're increasing the saturation, decreasing the value, and shifting the hue slider towards dark blue, you're reflecting reality, essentially. So that's why I always recommend you follow this magical curve. And as you can see, other artists follow it too, but they might not admit it. Anyway, this is a little quickie here. When you're hue shifting, you usually go in even increments. But when you reach magenta and green, the hue shifting isn't as effective. So you need to skip over those regions a little bit faster, essentially. And that's what makes it look even. So if you're curious, if you've ever tried to use the hue slider on your drawing to shift the hues of your drawing, sometimes it'll look off. And that's because of those skip regions. So anyway, back into color runs again, you can see for each of the color harmonies, we have different color run structures here. And I'd like to specifically point out triadic. I mean, that's already a lot of colors, as you can see. Triadic is one of the harder color harmonies to deal with, typically. If you want to get a good balance, you typically go for complementary. Typically, as many colors as you need. Anyway, if you don't hue shift, you'll end up with this. For instance, we're trying to do this analogous color scheme here, but the problem is that these colors aren't necessarily connected to each other. They're kind of disjoint. And you end up dealing with 18 colors in total, which is a lot. That is a lot of colors for a single drawing or for a single character. And another thing to note is that the more colors you add to the drawing, you sort of get to a drop-off point where adding more colors doesn't really do you much justice. And so that's why I want you to do this, which is essentially use hue shifting so that all the colors in your color palette connect evenly. Not only do you deal with less colors, they're more compatible with each other. And they still comply with the original color harmony, which was analogous. Anyway, when it comes to shading, there's a little thing that you shouldn't do, which is not hue shift on shadows. That's called kohl shading. And so the way to do kohl shading is if you have a multiply layer in Photoshop or whatever, and you use gray or black as your shading, as your multiply, then it's going to look like this. You can get a much better effect by hue shifting instead. As you can see, the hue shifted version looks a lot more lively and interesting. So that's why I think you should hue shift on your shadows. Anyway, now that we've colored color palettes, I'd like to cover how to color your character from ground zero, essentially. So one of the things that makes it easier for you to get started with this is to consider your constraints. Like, consider this is your OC, but you want her to have blonde hair and her skin needs to be blue or something. You haven't exactly nailed down the exact colors that you're going to use, but you know these things for a fact. And so you start splitting things into groups, right? We've already mentioned her hair is blonde, so that's the first thing we're going to color in. And so we're looking at her skin here. It's probably going to be in blue. It's probably going to be one of those shades of blue, but we don't know which one. And so as you're coloring in, you want to follow these 3 golden rules. So essentially, all values in the palette have to be used. In other words, that means all the lightnesses, as you can see, should be used. And then adjacent groups don't have the same value. That basically means that 2 groups can't have the same color or have the same lightness. And we'll see why that's important. And so we can get started doing this. We have this prototype color palette here, or this coloring here, where we are using all the values. So that step is checked out. However, we have a bit of a problem with the hair and the skin. As you can see, the hair and the skin are pretty similar in terms of lightness. But there's a way to fix that. In fact, there are 2 ways to fix that. Number 1 is the one we're going to look over first, which is you redistribute the colors so that that rule is now followed, essentially. So now you no longer have adjacent color groups that have the same value. And then step 3, each run takes up a decent amount of space. As you can see, we haven't used the warm colors yet. That's also another run. So we got to use all runs. So once we do, this is what we end up with. And then the smaller drawing, as you can see there, is an alternative approach to the problem with the hair being too similar to the skin tone. So if you want to keep the skin tone the same, you're probably going to have to tweak your palette a little bit so that the hair stands out from the skin. I personally like the second one more. I really like the platinum blonde. Anyway, let's go over color scope, which is not only color harmony, but also this new thing called vibe spheres and minima and maxima. So what is a scope? A scope describes the limits imposed on a color palette that basically prevent any bad colors from being put into it. And so scope is an umbrella term for all the things we've mentioned before: color harmony, vibe spheres, and minima and maxima. You want to make sure you're following all 3 of these. If you don't create your color palettes with scope, they're not really going to read well. They might look chaotic, like that first example that we had, and they might be difficult to integrate with the backgrounds. And so just looking at these color palettes, as you can see, one of the things that stands out the most is just the sheer number of colors being used. In that drawing over there, we have a red building, we have cyan curtains, we have white windows, we have a cyan sky, it just goes on and on. So if you want to know how to make good color palettes, you typically want to stick to minimalism. So anyway, if you're unfamiliar with some of the color harmonies, we'll just go over them briefly. So this is monochromatic. It's pretty simple. It's just essentially one big color, one overarching color that sort of emphasizes the emotion or some emotion that's associated with that color, puts a particular emphasis on that hue. And then there's complementary, which is what we've been talking about. It's so versatile, it's used all the time. And since you're going to be using it all the time, I want you to remember these simple identities right here. Red complements green. That's actually an interesting one, because that color wheel right there, red is complementary to cyan in that color wheel, but that's actually technically incorrect in the art world. Red is complementary to green. And then analogous, which is similar to monochromatic, except we sort of have a wider angle of colors that we can choose from. It looks very rich and interesting. And then triadic is the other one where you're dealing with 3 colors at a time. And that can be a bit tricky depending on the context. However, triadic has another good use, and that's when you're trying to depict essentially variance or variability in something. Like, for instance, if you have a bookshelf and you want to depict a bunch of different books with a bunch of different colors in their spines, you can go for a triadic. It's pretty simple. Now, anyway, this is another important lesson that we're going to go over, and this has to do with color constancy. And so this is the opposite of color relativity, where the actual values of colors depend on other colors that are in that palette. This is where colors are always assigned to the same identity, no matter what the drawing is. And so, for instance, you could say that metal is always gray, grass is always green, the night sky is always blue, and fur may always be brown or gray or whatever you choose. So if you think of color in a literalist sense, it's going to impede you because you're not going to be able to apply specific principles like putting a character in an environment that changes, that sort of filters their colors through this, through the lighting conditions. And additionally, you might not be able to get all the different aesthetics, as we'll go over. Anyway, we're going to talk about environment colors. So notice how in every picture that we're looking at here, there's a sort of a vibe associated with it. So that one is kind of depressing. It's like, reminds me of Breaking Bad a little bit. That's green, obviously. That's very warm and bright and beautiful. And that one is really cool and like kind of got a neon blue sort of feel to it. And so as you can see, you know, if we were to look at this through a literalist lens, we would say, no, that's incorrect. Her skin is supposed to be, I don't know, this apricot color or something. But under the lighting conditions, it's not apricot anymore. It's purple. So that's why I think you should look at colors through this sort of environmental sense. Anyway, this kind of brings us into local versus global colors. Local colors are essentially the original colors that the character has, and then the global colors are the colors after the character has been put into an environment. And so, for instance, an environment could be a cold, dark cave where the lighting is like this dark blue, or they could be in a sunset where the lighting is like really super bright and warm. And so obviously, if you're going to put your character in a sunset setting, you're going to want their colors to adjust to that so that they can blend in. And so there are two simple rules that you can follow here. If a color has a similar hue to that of the environment color, like for instance, that orange, if we're going to put that character in a warm environment, their fur is already orange. So its saturation is going to increase by a little bit. However, with that, if that color, so like, I think that's like steel blue or something, if I'm correct, that is not going to get more blue. It's actually going to get less blue. And this is what it looks like. So as you can see, under these different environments, the colors of the sleeves are going to look totally different in each one. And if you look at this, if you look at the hue and saturation wheel, you can see exactly what's going on. And so when the characters bask in the warmer light, you can see that gray color is drifting towards red because that's the color of the light. And likewise with that, with the cooler lighting, it does the opposite. It drifts towards blue. And so we can think of this phenomenon through the idea of a sphere of influence. And this is what we call the vibe sphere. Essentially, we can say that all colors are being drawn into this field, this sort of field where colors are put in the right environment, essentially. So in this image, these backgrounds are from Hilda, I believe. That grass is yellow. But if you look at that image, it's still grass. However, the grass, of course, isn't yellow anymore. It's blue because of the lighting. And that's because it's being pulled along by this sphere of influence. And so we can say that any colors that are in that influence, we can consider to be valid. But anything outside of it is invalid because it'll stand out. However, if you still want to use something like, if you still want to use a color as an accent, like for instance, neon green, you can still go for that, although it has to be in a lower volume. Anyway, this is another good example of what's going on. As you can see, the colors are pretty much the same, except that they're sort of offset by the center of that circle. And that gives you the proper effect of that character being in that environment, like the cold environment right there, and then the warm environment right there. And so another thing that is helpful to remember is, of course, the colors. Your perception of color will change depending on the colors around it. And so in this image, the hair is gray, but in that image, it's still sort of gray, but it's a little bit bluer. And that's because the tones that we're seeing in that image are a lot warmer. And so relatively speaking, gray is a cooler color. And so if you're using a palette that's heavy on cooler colors, you want to desaturate the warmer colors. And likewise, if you're using a palette that's heavy on warmer colors, you want to desaturate the cooler colors. All right. After that, we're going to be moving on to minima and maxima. Basically, this is the scope rule where you don't necessarily need to include black, like pitch black or like 100% white every single time. And so with this character, this looks kind of interesting because that's technically supposed to resemble white, and the line art, it's technically supposed to be black, but it actually isn't black. It's sort of this charcoal black, and then that's sort of an off-white. And so that kind of relates to the idea of minimum and maximum. So the maximum color is the brightest color in the palette, and the minimum color is the darkest color in the palette. All right, here's some more examples of people experimenting with that idea of minima and maxima. With this one, this is one of my favorites, actually. I really, really like what they're doing with it. The minimum and maximum are so close together. It's got this really interesting aesthetic to it. But if you look hard, you can see it's difficult to find the darkest color because everything is so similar in terms of value. And same goes with the lightest. And then, of course, with that one, you can clearly see what the darkest color is. It's all around the character. It doesn't get darker than that. And then, oh, whoops. Yeah, let's go back. Yeah, with that one, it's a little bit more difficult to tell, I guess, but the hair can technically resemble a minimum, whereas the whites of the eyes resemble the maximum. And that's typically what I like to do for the maximum, is the eye whites. And so anyway, you can see this in coding themes. If you're ever curious about coding themes, the same principle is being applied. Typically, black terminals are retro, I guess. They're not really my favorite, and for a lot of people, it's not really everyone's favorites. So if you can go for a lighter color that isn't so deeply contrasted to the screen, you typically want to do that, or typically most people want to do that. And so that's why they apply minimum or minima and maxima. And so they even do that with the color of the text. They make it like, for instance, in Everforce, in that Everforce theme, you can see it's sort of a off-white. And then in the Capuchin, I think, that's like a sort of a light, really, really light baby blue, I suppose. And then, of course, Baba Is You, the excellent puzzle game, has that as well. I personally believe that this game is inspired very much by programming themes. And honestly, it's a good idea to take inspiration from anything that you see in terms of color. There are plenty of things that can inspire you, and you'd be quite surprised. Anyway, to determine minima and maxima, it's pretty easy. You can, if you want a quick and dirty way, you can basically just get rid of the lightest and darkest colors in your palette. Or if you're starting a color run, you can start with a color that isn't necessarily white. And then as you're getting darker and darker, you stop you stop before you stop right before black, essentially. And so in this instance right here with Smiles, I'm sure some of you know who Smiles is. He kind of stands out from the rules because as you can see, his socks are like 100% white and his jersey is 100% black. Typically, I think this is really good for a comic book look because comic books tend to look super contrasted in terms of their coloring. And so we're just going to go over the 3 scope rules again. For the vibe sphere, you want to keep the vibe sphere decently small. If it's too big, then it's pretty much just going to be every possible color that's in that sphere. It's going to look like those other examples that we looked at with the color palettes that didn't have any scope. And then with color harmony, you typically want to keep the number of runs low. 2 is usually enough if you're going for complementary. That's typically what I like to do. Tertiary is a little bit difficult to work with, but you can do it, of course. And so with minima and maxima, it's not too uncommon for the maxima to be white. However, if you want that character to be in a sunset, again, I think it's important to consider it shouldn't be 100% white because it's sort of under that influence of the sunset. So it's not going to be 100% white. And so for another good tip for you is if you are doing line art, you typically don't want the line art or the line art, the external line art to be lighter than the darkest color. That can look kind of weird. All right, we're moving to luminance. This is something that trips a lot of people up unknowingly. It tripped me up a lot as well. And we're going to see why. So not only is it important to maintain scope, as we've looked at, it's also important to ensure that the colors are readable as well. And so you might not see the problem yet. However, we look at the grayscale version, there definitely is a big problem because, as you can see, it looks like the colors are the exact same. How's that possible? We'll go over it. It's essentially how saturation and value work together to produce luminance. You'll find there's actually a difference between value and luminance. And so for these 2 palettes, the second one, you can clearly identify where everything is. It's extremely important. It's like, I would say it's really an implicit part of our understanding of color, that when we look at things, we need to be able to discern things based off of their brightness. It's very important. And so here's some more examples. I think this is a better example than the one I provided. You can kind of see that the colors with this character are very similar to each other when you look at the grayscale version. And then when you take a look at this again, you'll start to see what's going on. It's a bit difficult to tell exactly where things begin and where things end because it doesn't have that strong value structure. And so with this example on the right here, you can see that this character has a really well-defined value structure, and it's very easy to tell where things are. And so doing the value check is pretty easy. All you have to do is just create an all black layer, set the blending mode to saturation, and then make sure it clips onto the color art. And then you'll get the grayscale version. Anyway, that phenomenon we described earlier where the colors look indiscernible from each other under the grayscale version, you can actually use it for interesting effects. This is what I call equiluminant colors. So equiluminant colors describe 2 or more colors that appear as one color under the grayscale version. And so they should be avoided for big overarching groups of color. However, you can add them to your drawing to introduce little interesting pops of color. And so as you can see with this example, it looks like her hair is highlighted, but it isn't necessarily highlighted because under the grayscale version, it looks almost exactly the same. And you can achieve a really interesting painterly sort of effect by using equiluminant colors. And yeah, they're pretty easy to use. You know, all you really need to know is that increasing saturation actually darkens the color. Decreasing saturation lightens the color, and then hue shifting towards one of the primary colors, red, green, or blue, that's actually going to darken the color overall. But if you shift towards cyan, yellow, and magenta, then it's going to do the opposite. And so if you want to make two colors equiluminant, you should play with those two properties above. And as you can see, that's an example of that being put into action, where I am simultaneously increasing the saturation and the value. They cancel each other out, and they produce a equiluminant color. So anyway, let's look at one more example where we're considering every aspect of what we've learned. And so we're going to do what we did last time for this character. We're going to determine the things that must stay the same for the character, regardless of color palette. So we're going to say her eyes must be green, her hair must be brown, and her skin must be an olive shade. And this is what we end up with. So basically, the vibe sphere is as big as possible. It's including literally the entire color wheel, which is a big no-no, but we haven't really decided anything, so we can't really make that kind of judgment yet about what the vibe sphere should be. And so this is what we have currently. We have colors that are very highly contrasted with each other. And we're gonna build on this. So for step 3, we're gonna pick a harmony. And basically, these are the different possible harmonies that you can choose just based off of orange, because so far we can see that orange is a very big color in our palette. And so the next thing you want to do is determine the vibe sphere size. That's really up to you, but it's generally a good idea to keep it small, as I previously mentioned. And it's going to make the colors a little bit more muted and a little bit less crazy. And so the next thing you want to do is offset that vibe sphere. What will happen essentially is that you're cooling down the colors. I would call this color temperature, but essentially you're decreasing the temperature here. You could have increased the temperature, but I decided to decrease the temperature for this example because I want to lean towards cooler tones for this color palette. So the next thing you can do, now that you've got all that stuff, you can start creating your color runs. And so we can start our color runs with the previous colors that we've dealt with, essentially the olive skin and the brown hair, and we can go from there. And we end up doing that. We get to the darkest color there. But then what I decided to do, which is a little neat trick, is actually go in reverse, build the run in reverse, starting from the darkest to the lightest, as opposed to the lightest to the darkest color. And this is what I end up with. And so next step after that, now that we've got our color palette, is to follow the 3 golden rules. And that's what we've got. And so there's really not much left to do. The color palette is, in fact, you could call this complete at this stage. But if you want, you can apply a little bit of minima and maxima to the palette. And like what I did is that I changed the eye whites. And then additionally with the darkest color, I made it slightly, I want to say slightly lighter and more blue. Yeah. Anyway, that's about it. I would like to see what you guys can do now. So I can see most of you have your computers out, or it looks like all of you do. I want you to go into club announcements and find challengecolortheory.zip, and I want to see what you can do. Follow the instructions outlined in the PDF, and have fun. That's it.
Nice job, Patrick. I didn't even introduce you. Can you introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah. If you're curious, I'm Patrick. I am the vice president of the UF Animation Club. And I'm really, really passionate about color theory. And just overall, I want to get more into animation. I want to work on some game projects this semester. I'm really excited to see where that goes. But honestly, I had a lot of fun doing this presentation. It's been in the works for a little bit. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
You put a lot of love in that. Great job.
Yeah, you had a,
Will the PowerPoint be posted anywhere? I'll try to take notes, but I think there are some parts that I missed a couple of steps on.
yeah, I'll upload it after. I mean, are there any specific slides that you want to go back to and review?
I think there's a portion on luminance that I missed. It was one on this episodes. Create black layers that blend mode to saturation. And then something about clipping.
Oh, yes, this part?
It's clipping the true.
Well, this is Fire Alpaca. I don't use Photoshop, so I'm assuming the steps are similar, but just slightly different.
You could also just duplicate layer and then, take the saturation all the way down. If
That's another good step.
yeah, if that's something, that's something.
You have a question?
So when you said to create an adjacent color run, you said to use it with the lightest color.
Yeah, you can sort of branch off from the lightest color. That's typically what I like to do.
Okay.
Good question. Yeah. How do you use the adjacent run exactly?
So to use the adjacent run, you want to take the lightest color from your previous color run and then hue shift in the opposite direction for that.
Okay. Cool. Nice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you go back to the equiluminant colors? slide?
Yeah.
One more over, actually. Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Kyla, how are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm having fun.
You're vibing?
I'm having fun.
Nice.
I'm enjoying it. Yeah. I was trying to take notes and then I'm honestly not sure if I could read this. Like, I'll have to check the recording later. But yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I'll upload the slides as well.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Glad I could make it. I was very excited to see what you were up to. Is this your first workshop?
Yeah.
It is. I mean, at UF, yes, it is my
Yeah.
first.
You've done workshops with the art at Santa Fe, art club at Santa Fe.
Well, actually, I mean, it wasn't technically a workshop, but I did do something for Develop. I just talked about a game that I made pretty much.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just realized the colors are in RGB and CMY. Is it
Yeah, pretty much.
coincidence or like what's that?
So there's actually a mathematical reason behind it. So the CMYK colors, magenta, cyan, and yellow, if you look at the hex codes for those colors, you can see 4 Fs in there. That means it would be 0, 1, 0, and then 2, 255s. And so the way luminance, which is basically how we perceive light, the way that's calculated is that it's an average. You're taking the average of all 3 of the R, G, and B. And so if you have 2 255s, the average is going to be higher.
Alright, is it okay if you go back to the maximum slides?
Oh yeah.
I have green on there. I don't have a.
Yeah, I can demonstrate it for you.
Oh wait, what's up? Did you want to still put that?
Oh, I just need it like a whiteboard.
Oh, okay. Anyone know? I don't really use Google Slides that much.
I can do annotate.
Oh yeah. Smart.
Josh, how are you?
All right, so in case you're curious about,
Still tired. Sorry?
oh no, I was just talking to the whatever. If any of you are curious about why specifically this, oh no, I need to unannotate. Yeah, so let's go back a couple slides. If any of you are curious about this part of equiluminant colors, hue shifting towards red, green, and blue darkens the colors, and then hue shifting towards cyan, magenta, or yellow lightens the color. I'll show you why that is. So the reason that works is because luminance, it's equal to the average. Oops. It's equal to the average of red, green, and blue. Divided by 3. And so if you're dealing with cyan, for instance, so if you want to get the luminance of cyan, that would be pretty easy. You would just, cyan is 255 on green and then 255 on blue. So it'd be 0 plus 255 plus 255, which is equal to something. So that's for cyan. But for another color, a primary color like red, red is going to be pretty straightforward. Red. That would be 255 plus 0 plus 0 divided by 3. And so essentially you can see here that the average or the luminance for red is going to be lower than the luminance for cyan because of this, essentially. 255 divided by 3 is less than 255 plus 255, whatever that is, divided by 3. So yeah, there you go.
Okay. So when you were giving me a little like palette tutorial like the last day of summer, was that just all in your head at the same time, or had you done this presentation before? I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah, so I've actually done at Santa Fe, I did a presentation that was basically this, but like an earlier version of it.
Okay.
It was a couple years back when I knew a little bit less about color. I was able to make some good points, but I feel like I was able to learn a lot more as years went on, I suppose. I kind of just refined my explanations. And yeah, that's why I call this PowerPoint 2.0 or color, what's it? Palette Perfection 2.0.
Palette perfection. All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Of course.
By the way,
Kylo.
Kylo, how do you spell that?
Kylo.
Nice to meet you, Kylo.
Nice meeting you. What's your name?
Veronica.
Veronica. Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Is the president of the animation club in here by any chance? Hello. Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
Oh,
Wait,
I didn't even look at chat.
Colin?
Colin.
Thank you so much for the meeting.
Just Colin though.
Thank you. Do you have any book recommendations or YouTubers? I loved it.
Collin or
Minus 1 L.
C-O-L?
Yeah.
Okay, so for Rico, I believe Veronica put some videos in the announcements before we went on to do this. I think it's Color Mentor or something. I would go check those videos out. Thank you so much for your insight. You're welcome. Thank you so much for this meeting. Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna head out, but it was a great presentation.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, take care.
Can we go back on sharing college radiation?
Yeah, certainly.
I don't think I got.
Let's.
Like, if anyone needs to leave, you can. We just have the space
Let's-
till 7
Let's get rid of Anna's
I don't know.
first.
day. Just saying.
Clear all zones.
Bye, Lauren. I guess that was for you. See why?
Yeah, we're gonna head back to that.
Was there a sign in, Veronica? Was there a sign in?
Going by so fast.
Sign in?
Would you like
Yeah, this slide or the next slide?
way too late?
I-
That's okay. Can
Yes.
1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Kind of convenient.
4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 plus 8, 21. Hey.
Yeah, it's really, really cool.
Is it always gonna be dark blue and yellow?
And then we die.
Dark blue and yellow?
Yeah,
okay.
like when you dark or light colors respectively.
Oh,
That was new
could you repeat that?
dress.
When you are creating a color run, it says that you set to shift hue towards dark blue and yellow based on, you know.
Yeah, so when you're getting darker, you typically want to shift towards blue.
All right, yes, bye.
But if you're getting lighter, you want to shift towards yellow, typically.
Is there,
It doesn't have to end at yellow, but you have to shift in that general direction.
is it, why is like dark, why is it dark blue and yellow? Why can't it be like red?
Um,
Uh,
It's because I think it's literally because the sky is blue. That's how shadows work. So like if you look at the shadow cast by an object, that shadow might be kind of bluish in color.
yellow,
Yellow is the color of sunlight. essentially. You can kind of make that connection.
yeah. Is it good if we go to the color harmonies, like red to green? That's, I can't remember all of them.
Uh,
So much green.
Which
I think it was in color scopes, definitely.
color scope? Okay.
Man, that's,
So what is scope?
yeah, be back,
Back. Oh, did you want to look at the harmonies?
yeah, the harmonies.
Okay.
Red, green, yellow, blue, yep, and green, purple, cyan, orange.
Yeah, Gators Lakers Christmas, but I didn't know about the last.
Yeah. You have a question?
So like, for that rule about like dark blue and yellow, if our sky and sun were different colors, that would also change?
I believe so. I haven't really thought of it that way. Like for an alien planet, yeah, I would assume it might be different.
That'd be weird to do.
Sorry?
That'd be weird.
It would be weird. Yeah, it's super weird to think about.
Red sun, purple sky.
Is it okay if we go, like, just explain minima and maxima a little bit more?
Yeah, so okay, Nick is saying, could you mention how to vibe shift? Would you use a color balance layer or
Sure, bye. Sorry, my bad.
yeah, so if you want to vibe shift with layers, what you could do to achieve that same effect is just use a normal layer, but turn down the opacity, and I think it'll cause some of the colors to like converge to that color. So like if you do it like bright yellow, then the colors will sort of approach like a warmer tone. So yeah, that's one way to do it. You can multiply as well with a really saturated color and get that same effect, but it will darken the colors overall. There are a couple ways to go about it. I think you can also use a hue layer as well, just lower the opacity on that so that it isn't like 100%. Yeah, so let's go back to minima and maxima. So I would call minima and maxima more like a trick to make the palettes look nice. If you want some practical examples. Oh, is it? Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's kind of what's going on.
okay.
The interesting thing is that with Stocking's hair, it's like a really dark blue, but we don't really factor that in necessarily because we're really looking at the big picture here. The big picture says that the darkest color is going to be the shadow of the dress.
Okay, so yeah, I guess instead of using like, okay, it's replacing black and white with the lightest and darkest colors of your.
Right, basically. And yeah, so basically all I'm really saying with minimum and maxima is that you should have a good reason to use the darkest color that your monitor can support. Does it really need to be 100% black in every scenario that you choose to use black? The answer is no, because black is a really powerful extreme color if you think about it.
Okay. All right. what about, I guess, being greedy with hues?
Yeah, so with being greedy, that's really more referring, when I say being greedy, that's referring to staying minimal, being minimalist with your colors. And when I'm saying greedy, I'm really referring to the individual colors, not necessarily the hues. So by greedy, it typically means that whatever color you have at the moment, you use it to color as much as you can while still sort of like, yeah, this going back might be a little bit more helpful. So like with this scenario here, when we choose that color right there, that dark color, we instantly color that jacket, that hat, which is a pretty big portion of the drawing.
Okay. So it's not being greedy with the actual colors, it's being greedy with the area.
Yeah, greedy with the area.
Okay, coverage. Okay. And through this, you might find like a better option to, I guess, fill it out.
Yeah, so the reason you try to fill up as much as possible is so you end up dealing with less colors overall. So like in the early stages, you have so little colors to deal with, but if you find something, you can stop right there with the amount of colors that you have. You don't have to have any more than what you, like for here, that is 5 colors. You can stop here. You can absolutely stop here. And the reason we're able to make that judgment is because we've taken a greedy approach to coloring things. We're coloring as much as we possibly can. And so another great way to think about it is how retro pixel art games typically have really small color palettes, but they make it work. Think of Game Boy as well. I think it only has 4 colors, right?
Ish, yeah.
As per icon, yeah.
Yeah. Any more questions at the moment? Let's look at Zoom.
Where's the posted line art you mentioned? For the exercise?
Okay.
The 11, 12 a.m.
Oh, there we go, I found it. Colors.
So how are things looking so far in terms of like your progress with the challenge?
Pretty good.
Pretty great.
Oh yeah, right. By the way, the curve, do you have to follow that, I guess, sloping curve or?
It's a good guideline to follow. If you look at other artist examples, they do follow a similar shape as not exactly a T, in other words.
It goes down.
Yeah, it follows that general path. Yeah, pretty much.
Lance like the sword. Lance like the sword. Get home safe.
They're 2 separate types of weapons, you know?
Wait, what?
Pointy gun.
Yeah, pointy gun, is that not?
It's like the distinction of like a knife to a sword.
Ah, okay.
Always thought like a lance was more like a spear
All
than.
right. For those of you in Zoom, if you have any additional questions, you can ask away.
Yeah.
We're going to be closing the meeting soon.
That's a lance. That's a jousting tool, but it's technically a lance.
Oh, is that a lance?
Yeah, that's a lance.
Well, I guess it is more like a sword.
Lance is just point on end, right?
When you're
Some
doing
spears
like
and lances,
coloring,
like, you know, like how sword is a
the
counter.
light doesn't.
Lances,
like when you're going on the.
What is a
different
monitor?
monitors,
I'm just
it's fine to look different on a different monitor, because they like project the color different.
Yeah, it'll look a bit different.
Oh.
Does it make a huge difference? Maybe not. Although I do think your monitor, like if you feel like your monitor is too warm or too cold, if you're really concerned about it, you could always go into the settings and make it more neutral. But as opposed, like if you're curious about how other people are going to see it, like you can't make the distinction that everyone's monitors are going to be neutral. Honestly, I don't think it's a huge deal. I think people just, if you end up looking at your monitor for so long, you might just get acclimated to looking at those colors through that filter or whatever. I don't think it'll have a big impact.
The guy actually that I recommended was talking about that issue, about how he was working in his office where the walls were blue, and so that like
Yeah, it tricks your mind.
everyone got his work back and they're like, why is this so orange? So he had to like paint his walls. So just like being in a well-lit room with like a neutral color.
Yeah, I can imagine in a professional setting, it would make a big difference.
But
No, I do see this.
I got criticized.
Yeah.
because I edited a video once and it ended up all green.
oh no,
'Cause I
see,
just
there you
couldn't
go.
tell.
It does matter.
If it's an issue, honestly, just something you can consider doing is just like send it to a different device and take it to a different room. Look at it
Yeah.
and then.
Yeah.
It's like different stuff, just to evaluate.
Yeah, okay.
Because it was definitely a thing when I looked at it on my phone, it's like, oh shit. it
So
is green.
Yeah.
You're right.
Don't work in a cavern, like light up the space some.
Yeah, if you like to submit your work, I'm not exactly sure where people do it most of the time.
Share your work
So I
channel.
could
Okay, you put it in share your work. Okay,
Yeah.
that's where I recommend it.
the end, and we're more like this, or more like, it's cone on stick.
All right, submitted my challenge to Discord. Nice.
Dang, fast.
Do you have Discord on this laptop?
I do.
Color currently has. Need to learn about that. Very good for color.
This was an important meeting.
This is very good.
Oh, shucks.
Because it's about to rain. I can smell it in the air.
Wow, that's really beautiful.
Wow, Shark. Oh, I didn't butcher your name. That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's so cool. I can.
Yeah.
That's like complimentary, isn't it? Yeah, I can see you kind of did the minima and maxima thing. That looks really, really nice.
Nice.
You see how the eye whites are like that color?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see you took a minimalist approach as well. That looks really, really beautiful.
Well done.
Yeah, well done.
Are we seeing? Oh, yeah.
What is it?
Tablet or something, but you don't really. Right now, this is just like a mirror
Oh.
monitor.
Does this have any drawing applications on it by chance?
I think it does.
Is this full screen?
Or is it touchscreen mode?
Since I haven't really used Photoshop, does Photoshop allow you to like, when you use the fill bucket, does it automatically fill that selection, or do you have to use the magic wand?
I don't know. I don't use Photoshop. I use all the free tools. So someone.
Okay, well we have
Use clip, I'm sorry.
whatever, Krita. We can
I'm
do-
using Photoshop and I forgot about the fill bucket. I was like struggling so much, and because I haven't like done anything like this in a while in like Photoshop. So yeah, thank you for reminding me. I'm gonna test it out and see if it works.
Yeah, you're welcome.
How have you guys been surviving without the fill bucket? I'm literally just using the fill bucket right now.
Wait, what is not?
Yeah, well, what are you guys using?
Yeah.
Hold on. What are you guys using? Clip Studio?
Okay.
Ready, babe.
I'm trying to learn. I used to use Photoshop. I still own it, but
Right.
like Clip Studio more.
I'm in another meeting
The
now.
last one.
Wow, club hopping. Have fun.
So I'm not for it, but I don't have a ride. 'Cause you
I'm
made
gonna
me stay.
download this.
No, you don't have.
Good meeting, it was very informative. I struggle so much with colors, so this is actually very neat to have a way to make
Happy to help. Continue to download. I'm gonna try my own and see how it goes.
You're gonna try yours.
Yep, I'm gonna try a hand at it.
You can show in folder. I don't have anything weird in there.
Okay, yeah.
My downloads folders go like
Don't expose.
You have
Baxter. I also for the officers, I made new graphics to go TVs that are outside of the pic or inside the pic, like right next to the pic. So that's what those are, in case you were paying attention.
with
It's okay.
color
I'll upload. What are the 3 characters that you extracted the line art from?
Those are just some Star versus OCs. I'm not exactly sure who. Yeah.
That definitely looks like Star versus Evil or whatever the show.
Yeah.
I have not watched it.
Yeah, I chose them because they're really easy to color.
Get a star coquette or something.
Could be.
Um,
Nice.
does anybody know? So I'm using Photoshop, and every time I use the fill paint bucket, it just does the whole sheet of what I'm working on, like the entire thing, just
Yeah,
full of color. How do I fix that?
What's the magic? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Make sure in the layer, and then there's a setting, I'm forgetting the name, it's in the top left. It's like tolerance, something like that. Probably way too high. I don't know. Do you remember the name of that setting? It's always way too high. And you have to,
Yeah, tolerance sounds about right.
I'm blanking on the name of it. It's something like tolerance. It's just in the top left.
So sorry.
Yeah. Wait, actually, you use Krita, right? I'm not very familiar with it. I want to select like a portion of the line art, but it's not really doing what I want. Do I have to flip back and forth?
There you go.
Oh, actually, yeah,
Being mean.
I actually have that option. Okay,
I feel like I color very
Unfortunately, my workflow, no one needs to know about it. I'm learning just like you guys.
okay, I'm gonna try something kind of cursed. I'm gonna the reason I use Fire Alpaca still is because of the fill bucket. I'm actually serious. The fill bucket is just so fast. It just works. It just does what it needs to.
What program are you using?
Uh,
Fire alpaca. It's so ancient, but it works.
Yep, it's ancient for sure. All right. Yeah, I'm just gonna start with a lighter color here. And then, yep, look, I'm hue shifting. Woo. All right, that's too similar in value, so I'm going to yep. And then let's start and then see how that looks. Nope. No, not for me.
Just no.
So, okay.
Did any of you actually like the ending of Star versus the Forces of Evil?
I didn't actually watch that much of the show. I hear a lot of people don't like the ending.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. Yeah, it was pretty lame, to be honest.
I actually spoiled the ending for myself because people have said it's so terrible. It doesn't seem that impressive to me. It seems like it was kind of rushed.
It wasn't just rush, it was extremely mean-spirited. I mean, like, damn.
That whole era of shows had all those weird shows, like Steven Universe had a bad ending.
Oh, yeah.
Starverse had a bad ending.
I mean, at least with
So
Steven,
bad.
at least with Steven Universe, they had like the epilogue to maybe like up forward a little bit, but then you got Star versus the Forces of Evil, which made a ship within the show take precedence.
You can reference the lineup for color. Okay.
not even several billion individuals are all dead just so a ship could stay alive.
You can get like a color mode.
I mean,
So
so was basically, and from what I understand, became a fan service machine. I just did whatever the whims of the most popular loud Twitter users were.
Is it even fans? At this point?
Is this what the people want?
this
What
this might be
people want?
pretty close to
X, sorry, X.
complementary, I would say, although I think if yellow, I'm not exactly sure. If yellow is the dominant color, then
So I'm trying to compete with X as the everything.
I think the other color in the split complementary would be cyan. I'm using indigo, so this might be more analogous. Yeah, so I'm gonna try to like, yeah. Do you know how to reference the line art for the color for the paint bucket?
Oh, I should have done that. I didn't realize I colored on the wrong line. I was like, why is my lines looking off?
Honestly, okay, repeat to me what you wanted
Is the line art on the
because
same
I
layer?
might not know.
No, it's a single layer, but I forgot to make my own layer below it. So the line art will go over it.
Copy the line.
Well, what I wanted to do was just make the paint bucket fill based on the line art. This is the line art.
Oh, is it not already doing that?
No, I did something really really hacky where I copied the line art and then I'm filling. So I copied the line art and then I'm I'm putting the color on that line art. Settings, Dockers, okay. So Dockers, should be tool options. Tool options is there, so we're gonna look in here. What to fill.
Oh, nice.
So I'm not exactly sure what that is.
Maybe just chocolate and
Reference, okay. Merge copy of all layers. I think that's what we want, right? Let's see what that does. Yep, thank you so much, Alex G.
thank you, Alex, the real G, for, wow, I'm learning more about creative because of you. Thank you.
G.
Oh,
The more you know. Gradients needs to be. Rita is cool, but it is quirky. Yeah, I agree with that sentiment.
She is a little bit quirky.
All right, so we're gonna restart with my color scheme. Just start with yellow as the base color. Can't go wrong with that. Yeah, then from here, I'm actually going to like, I'm gonna hue shift in this direction. I'm gonna switch things up a bit. Make the hair this color.
Interesting.
And then I'm going to make the maxima this color, or I think we can get a bit brighter than that. Yeah, typically the maxima is like really close to white in most circumstances. All right, is there a shortcut for the eyedropper? It's usually, oh, okay, it's P. Yeah, we're gonna pick that. Go back to, and then bucket. Bucket is, it's F, okay. So P to select that. F, I'm gonna darken, U shift. Just so there's a bigger difference between the different values. And then for the clothing, I'm gonna go for complementary. Controlled, okay, there you go. See how that looks. I typically like to go for hot pink rather than magenta. I don't know, that's just me.
how do you add like a white outline again? Forgot.
The way I did it in my software was kind of weird. I basically used the fill tool, made sure to reference all the layers, but then I put it at the bottom
Oh, and
of
you're
everything,
spamming it.
and then I expand.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do. It's not doing it for me.
What are you using?
Medibang.
I think it's similar to like fire alpaca. It's like the same thing.
It actually is. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Which channel do we put our work in?
Share your work.
Share your work. All right.
Yeah, I'm excited. Gonna peek the channel later.
Yeah, it doesn't get.
The dress is giving Twilight Princess.
Yeah.
Very cute.
Yeah, select all the colors, grow selection by 1 to 2 pixels, fill that with white, and then put in the PG. Yeah. That sounds like expand. Or that sounds like, that's pretty much how you do the outline.
Is there an outline tool to redeal with those outlines or something?
If your line art's in the same layer, you can also select.
Oh, you want to know how to do outlines?
Well, it makes
Knowing there's something in order to like add outlines to something that's already there. And that probably can make the outlines more solid or something. Yeah, I did like editing software. Because I'm having PTSD of Microsoft Paint fill tool from this.
Oh yeah, I can kind of see it here with what I'm doing.
Share your work, I think. Okay.
It's not my fave.
Is it
Oh my lord. There we go.
So when is the next meeting? Is it just like every Monday or what?
Yes, it's every Monday. Thank you for coming. Every Monday, 5:15 p.m. here.
Okay.
Yes. And if you
Monday
want
will be back.
to, thank you for coming. If you wanted to get a calendar so you know like what workshops are happening or activities, like the panels and stuff, there should be slides in the announcements that have all the dates on there. Yeah.
Y'all have like a group me or is just the Discord?
It's a Discord.
Or
Alright, cool.
Group Me, come on.
I mean, that's like
We're better
every
than
club got that, but you right.
Group Me is nasty.
Exactly.
Even have file sharing capabilities other than pictures. Get out of here.
Alright, thank you.
Of course.
Oh yeah, I can see that. Yeah, it looks really nice. Yeah, I like that Krita has like the ability to see previous colors.
Yeah.
Oh, whoops.
All in
Oopsies.
one L.
Wrong color.
All in. There's two L's. You need to remember the difference, or else, you know, by the end of the semester, I'm totally gonna spell your names wrong.
All right, I'm just gonna make a couple of adjustments.
I'm probably gonna have to finish this at home. Just
Hey,
trying.
no worries. We're not grading you. What am I gonna say? Shame on you, you didn't finish.
There we go.
Yeah, shame on you, you finished early.
Thank you for sharing your work.
Dude,
Your tablet setup is insane. Truly amazing. I love seeing everyone's setup. Very fun. Some people are like, I like the
Wait, this
iPad.
thing,
There's some people who are like, I'm gonna whip out my Canvas Pro Eagle.
Can't wait to see your future stuff, Patrick. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
yeah, I put a lot of money into this. I'm gonna use it.
Yeah, dude.
All right, do you think we should end the Zoom meeting now?
If you want to go ahead and any more questions, thank you for coming. And feel free to share your work in the share your work channel on Discord. We'll be putting out a recording pretty soon afterwards.
Yeah, you know what I realized? The alpha on
Yeah.
the bucket is like wrong. Yeah.
That's the default thing.
Sorry, I haven't used Krita in like ever. I touched it once. I think I own it on Steam. It's like $20 to buy it, so I want to support it.
Yeah, I'm gonna head out. I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for hosting this. This was amazing. I will send my work to the group chat later. And yeah, thank you so much. I think I have the next workshop, so I have a lot. You set the bar very high. Great job.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Stop the recording now.
Yep, stop it right now.